We all know the names of Alfred Jodl and Wilhelm Keitel, two prominent generals of Nazi Germany who were executed after the Nuremberg Trials for their roles in war crimes and crimes against humanity. But did you know that they were not the only German generals who faced execution after World War II? In today's video, we dive into the stories of these high-ranking officers. Were they all willing participants in Nazi war crimes, or were some of them entangled in a deadly game of politics and power? Join us as we explore their fates, their legacies, and the complex moral questions that still cast a shadow over them today. Johann Georg Richert. Johann Georg Richert was born on April 14, 1890, and a general in the Wehrmacht. Richert commanded the 286th Security Division. This unit operated within German-occupied territories of the Soviet Union, specifically in the Army Group's center-rear area. It committed numerous large-scale war crimes and atrocities, resulting in the deaths of thousands of Soviet civilians. As a high-ranking general, Johann Georg Richert was deeply involved in the Nazi regime's brutal policies, particularly on the Eastern Front. Richert oversaw operations that resulted in the mass execution of civilians, plundering of local resources, and the systematic persecution of Jews and other minority groups. Under his command, actions were taken that violated the principles of war and basic human rights. His division was implicated in several massacres and acts of reprisals against partisan resistance, earning him a notorious reputation. From November 1943 to April 9, 1944, Richert served as the commanding officer of the 35th Infantry Division. This division, like many other Wehrmacht units, was involved in war crimes in the Soviet Union. In early 1944, during a German army retreat, the 35th Infantry Division conducted an operation in the Gomel region of Belarus. This operation resulted in the forced expulsion of 40,000 civilians from their homes, leading to the deaths of approximately 9,000 of them. Richert was captured by Soviet troops on May 8, 1945. In 1946, he was put on trial by a war crimes trial conducted by a Soviet military tribunal, which took place in Minsk, the capital of Soviet Belarus. The defendants in the trial included German military personnel, police officers, and SS officials who were accountable for executing the occupational policies in Belarus during the German-Soviet War from 1941 to 45. The court sentenced Richert to death, and he was publicly executed by hanging the following morning on January 30, 1946 in Minsk, in front of an audience of over 100,000 people. Anton Dossler. Born on May 1, 1891, Dossler began his military career well before the outbreak of World War II. He served in World War I and subsequently weaved his way through the ranks of the German military, ultimately securing a position within the Wehrmacht. During World War II, Dossler held several important commands. His role as a general of the infantry placed him in positions of significant authority, where he was responsible for implementing the strategic and often brutal orders handed down by the Nazi leadership. By 1944, as a general of the infantry, Dossler was commanding the 75th Army Corps in Italy. During this period, the tide of war was turning against Germany, and the Wehrmacht faced increasing pressures from the Allies. In March of 1944, 15 soldiers from the US 2677th Special Reconnaissance Battalion were captured by a unit of Italian fascist soldiers and soldiers from the German army. The soldiers had been on a mission to sabotage the Italian railways and harbors. Acting under orders from Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, Dossler commanded that these prisoners be executed, a direct violation of the Geneva Convention, which mandates the humane treatment of POWs. Despite the captured soldiers being in uniform and clearly identifiable as combatants, Dossler's execution order was carried out promptly. The 15 American soldiers were shot, a war crime that would come to haunt Dossler. After Germany's subsequent defeat, Anton Dossler's actions did not go unnoticed. He was captured by Allied forces and faced a military tribunal, where he was charged with war crimes. Held accountable for signing the execution order directly leading to the death of American soldiers. In his defense, Dossler claimed that he hadn't issued the order, but merely relayed it to Colonel Almers from Field Marshal Kesselring, arguing that the execution of the OSS men was a lawful directive. However, the tribunal saw through his defense, firmly rejecting his plea of superior orders. They concluded that Dossler had overstepped his bounds, taking it upon himself to order the mass execution outside the Führer's command. Dossler was found guilty by a tribunal, and on December 1, 1945, he was executed by a firing squad at Aversa, Italy. The execution was captured on black and white still and movie cameras. Gottfried von Erdmannsdorff. Gottfried von Erdmannsdorff was born on April 12, 1893, and was a German general. He was a highly decorated general major and also a recipient of the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross. His military career was marked by his involvement in several key operations, particularly the Mogilev Offensive in 1944. The offensive was a critical part of the larger Soviet Operation Bagration, which aimed to reclaim Belarus from Nazi occupation and push the German forces back toward their homeland. By 1944, the German forces, under constant pressure from the advancing Soviet troops, had transformed Mogilev into a formidable defensive position, often referred to as Fortress Mogilev. The offensive was characterized by intense and brutal combat, as the Soviet forces, employing overwhelming firepower and numerical superiority, sought to break through the German defensive lines. Despite the strong fortifications and German resistance, the Soviet forces managed to encircle Mogilev. The city's defenses crumbled under the relentless Soviet assault, leading to significant German losses in both manpower and material. By June 28, 1944, the Red Army had successfully captured Mogilev and Erdmannsdorf was captured by Soviet troops. He was tried by a Soviet tribunal in what is known as the Minsk Trial for crimes committed in Belarus. Von Erdmannsdorf identified with the objectives of the Deutsches Offizierbund and co-signed the call of the 50 Generale an Volk und Wehrmacht, a public declaration made by 50 high-ranking German military officers during World War II. This declaration was issued on March 17, 1944, as an appeal to the German people and the Wehrmacht. Key points of the declaration included loyalty to Hitler, a call for unity, total war effort, and the denial of defeat. Von Erdmannsdorf was convicted of numerous crimes, such as the deportation of 10,000 individuals, the destruction of villages, schools, and churches, and the execution of disabled people during fortification construction of Mogilev. He also faced charges for using people as human shields, organizing reprisal operations against civilians under the pretext of combating partisans, and establishing camps where they perished. Von Erdmannsdorf, along with 18 other officers, was sentenced to death and hanged on the 30th of January 1946 in Minsk. Helmut von Panwitz. During World War II, von Panwitz was particularly known for his command over the 15th SS Cossack Cavalry Corps. Initially tasked with anti-partisan operations in the Balkans and Eastern Front, the corps was notorious for its brutal methods and collaborated closely with Nazi forces. Panwitz led a highly diverse unit, effectively integrating troops from various backgrounds, including Russian Cossacks who chose to fight under the German banner against the Soviet Union. His leadership was marked by a degree of autonomy and responsibility relatively rare, even within the highly disciplined German military. However, the actions of his units often involved severe reprisals against civilian populations, making them complicit in numerous war crimes. As the war drew to a close, von Panwitz and his corps retreated westward. With the Soviet army advancing, they surrendered to British forces in Austria, hoping for leniency. However, in a controversial decision, the British handed Panwitz and his men over to the Soviet authorities. Von Panwitz was subsequently tried by a Soviet military tribunal for his involvement in war crimes, particularly those committed on the Eastern Front. Found guilty, he was sentenced to death and executed in Moscow on January 16, 1947. The trial and execution of Helmut von Panwitz remains subject of debate among historians. Some argue that he was a scapegoat, unfairly singled out for the atrocities committed by the Nazi regime. Others maintain that his leadership role and the actions of units under his command justified his conviction. He was initially rehabilitated by a military prosecutor in Moscow in April 1996, but in June 2001, the reversal of the conviction of Panwitz was overturned, leading to his conviction being reinstated. Eberhard Herf. Eberhard Herf held the rank of SS Brigadeführer, equivalent to a brigadier general, and served as the commander of the Order Police in the Minsk region of occupied Belarus. As the commander of the Police Regiment North, Herf was directly responsible for overseeing and implementing Nazi policies of persecution and extermination in the occupied territories. Under his command, police units carried out mass killings of Jews, Roma, and other targeted groups. Herf worked in coordination with other SS and police units, including the notorious Einsatzgruppen, to carry out the final solution, the Nazi plan to exterminate European Jews. Later in his career, Herf wrote to the Reichssecurity main office requesting a transfer. He expressed a desire to leave his post in the East, candidly stating, "To get out of the East since, to be honest, I've had enough." After the war, Herf was among the defendants in the Minsk Trial, a Soviet war crimes trial held in January 1946. Alongside two Wehrmacht generals, Herf stood as the highest-ranking official of the occupying force on trial. He was charged with crimes against humanity and war crimes for his role in mass murders and other atrocities committed under his command. The trial found Herf guilty, and he was sentenced to death. Herf was executed on January 30, 1946, along with several other high-ranking Nazi officials convicted in the Minsk trial. His case serves as an example of the direct involvement of Nazi police and SS leadership in the Holocaust and other war crimes committed on the Eastern Front during World War II. Ludwig Köbler. Köbler, known as the Limping Nurmi among his troops because of the disfigurements he suffered from wounds in World War I. At the outbreak of war, Köbler led the 1st Mountain Division during the invasion of Poland in September 1939. His division played a crucial role in securing victories for the German forces, contributing to the rapid fall of Poland. For his leadership during this campaign, Köbler was awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross. On 25 October 1940, Köbler was appointed to command the 49th Mountain Corps, which included the 1st Mountain Division. His corps was selected for Operation Felix, the planned capture of Gibraltar, but the operation was later called off. On December 19, 1941, Köbler was named commander of the 4th Army on the Eastern Front. Frustrated with Hitler's insistence on not allowing withdrawals during the critical winter defensive battles, Köbler found the situation unbearable and requested to be relieved of his duties. Consequently, on January 20, 1942, he was reassigned to the Army Führer Reserve, or in English, the Senior Officer Reserve Pool. During the final stages of the war, Köbler sustained injuries and was captured in Yugoslavia. He was subsequently tried for war crimes and sentenced to death. In 1947, a Yugoslav court sentenced Köbler and his successor, General Lieutenant Hans von Herzlin, to death. As a result, Köbler was executed by hanging in Ljubljana on August 18, 1947. Notably, his fate mirrored that of his younger brother, General Lieutenant Josef Köbler, who was hanged in Belgrade on February 26, 1947. Well, that's it. We hope you've enjoyed our video. Please let us know what you think, and be sure to march on over to the subscribe button and join our History Battalion. Don't forget to like and hit the notification bell to stay updated on more World War II content. See you next time.